Every month, we're always getting a brand new major update that's supposed to be filled with new content, but this time, there's actually not that much this time, but that doesn't mean that there's still much to talk about. Of course, one of them being the characters, and at long last, they're finally playable. McClaine is one that some PvP players have their eyes out for. He's part of the Strategy, Meteor, and Yeelis faction. His AoE skills would change the tiles to Torrent for 1 turn at 3, 4, or 5 stars, but at 6 stars, it will last for 2 turns. Enemies on this tile will have their movement considered to be in water, which doesn't affect flyers and other aquatic characters. For his bonds, you will need Werner and Meriendel, so hopefully you got them. Taking a look at his unique skills, he has a 1C that has a 4-turn cooldown which changes the tile around him to Torrent when he uses it. He'll be able to act again, and when moving through allies' Torrent, he has a chance to negate mobility twice. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what that part truly means, but he also has this buff that does not lose their turn duration, which is pretty cool. His second skill has a 5-turn cooldown that attacks enemies within 3 blocks wide and 5 blocks long, and enemies has a 25% chance to be frozen when they're in water. Also, when hitting 3 or more enemies, the cooldown is reduced by 3 turns. Now for his 3C, which gives him a passive that lets him revive for half of his health, the skill will let you select yourself, any of the water, death, swamp, or his torrent tile, will do an AoE that has a 1 ring range. Then the skill will change to Turbulent Vortex. And what that does is that it ignores guard, and if the enemy is in water, then his crit rate is increased by 20%. Afterwards, all enemies that are in water will take fixed damage 1 time of McClaine's attack. Then the skill will change back into Lord of the Currents. And I don't think the skill has a cooldown either, and that might actually be really good on him. I say that because McClaine is pretty much like Oldius. His main purpose is to slow down the enemies, and seeing that his 2 skills that allows him to do just that has a huge cooldown, so his 3C will help him do just that. You may not be able to use it as much because it does change into a single target skill afterwards, so you will have to use that in order to get that AoE skill back. He is pretty bulky as well, thanks to him being an aquatic character, as well as having an increased attack and defense in his talents. Aquatic units in water have 20% increased defense, so that means he can have a total of having a 45% defense increase when he's at 6 stars. So if you want to deal with them, magic attacks will be more effective, or just on any aquatic enemies in general. That attack increase is pretty nice as well, which makes him have a better chance at sniping enemies through tanks with his 3C. The only real problem with him is that you want him at 6 stars, so that his special terrain lasts 1 turn longer, and his mobility will be an issue, especially when you need to use his single target 3C skill, so just watch out for those kind of stuff. The second character is Ricky, which has a really weird mechanic going on for him. He's part of the protagonist Legion of Glory and Yeelis faction. His talent lets him maximize his attack all the way up to 30% at 6 stars. After taking action, you can select a certain direction to defend at. So when he's being attacked at the direction you selected, his physical damage taken decreases and heals by a certain amount times his attack as HP. That also increases his mobility by 2, that lasts for 3 turns. The direction he faces to get all those buffs has a 2-turn cooldown before he can use this again. For his bonds, he will need Rachel and Landius. As far as his unique skills goes, his 1C is a passive that lets him guard for allies within 1 block and is immune to stun. His defense and magic defense increases all the way up to 8%. His 2C has a 3-turn cooldown that will cause the enemy to only be able to move in a straight line for 2 turns that cannot be dispelled. Afterwards, he heals his teammates for 1.5 times of his own attack. You can attack from 2 blocks with this skill as well. Finally, his 3C has a 3-turn cooldown that gives a command effect to enemies that are in the direction he is facing to defend, which will reduce the enemy's crit rate by 20%, and his teammates will have their attack and int increased by 15%. This 3C is an AoE skill that attacks in 3 blocks wide and 5 blocks long, that dispels 1 buff on the enemy, and they're only able to move in a straight line that lasts for 1 turn that cannot be dispelled. After using the skill, he gets another command effect whereas enemies in the direction that he is facing to defend will take fixed damage before they attack. But if the enemy is in mixed forces, then the fixed damage cannot be immunized, which can only be activated to a max of 3 times that lasts for 2 turns and cannot be dispelled. First off, what's up with your design, my guy? Like, why does he look so flat?
What?
Number 2, he looks to be a pretty interesting character. His talent where he can choose to defend gives him some pretty good buffs. And from what I understand, he can choose to defend up, right, down, and left. And the strange part about it is the range he chooses to defend. It will reach all the way to the edge of the map, but 5 blocks wide. It's a bit weird, but at least he has a 2-turn cooldown, so you can easily swap his direction. His 1C allows him to be a physical tank, which he might do well thanks to the buffs he gets and the command effect from his 3C. Speaking of, let's talk about his 3C. He's taking what Auto Cradle does, but slightly worse. The range on the skill is 1 block less than Auto Cradle, and the debuff only lasts for 1 turn, whereas with Auto Cradle, with his passive, which, by the way, you'll be using it on him like all the time, and combine that with his 3C, he just does it so much better. Even though the straight line debuff still does only last for 1 turn, at least when he hits 3 or more enemies, the cooldown is reduced by 3. And I know with Clock, if you're lucky enough, you can spam Ricky's 3C all you want, but what if you don't get lucky? You see what I'm saying? Like with Auto Cradle, even if he didn't get Clock, he'll get his 3C much more faster. For the command effect after using Ricky's 3C can easily be avoided as well, if the enemy doesn't do anything, and if they attack in a direction where Ricky isn't defending at. As with Auto Cradle, his fixed damage is based on if the enemy has moved or didn't move. If you think about it, both of them almost does the exact same thing, but the main point of using them is very different. Ricky is much more capable of dealing much more damage, and is pretty self-sufficient because he's kinda all over the place with his kits in a good way. Auto Cradle is used to disrupt the enemy's team positioning, and is possibly better at being a physical tank. So in the long run, you have to think about it in a situational standpoint. Ricky cares about his team. He's doing stuff like pseudo healing, guarding, and making things a bit worse for the enemies with his command effects. Auto Cradle will protect his teammates, but at the same time, all he cares about is messing with the enemy's movement with his annoying fixed damage. Next, there is 2 new exclusive. First one is for Emperor Lovina. It's a weapon that gives a 5% increase to his HP and attack, and when he has that special effect from his faction buff, his AoE skill range increases by 1. And after using his talent to teleport his allies, those allies gain damage dealt plus 10% that lasts for 2 turns, and his mobility buff will last an extra turn. Second is for Saint of the Ark, which is the older version of Licorice. It's a helmet that gives a 10% increase to her HP, and when there is 2 or more allies within 1 ring of her, then her Dark Light Synthesis skill will not damage her teammates, and her healing received is increased by 8%. And if you guys don't know what it's talking about, Dark Light Synthesis is her 1C transformation skill, and on the last turn, she displays these special grids, and at the end of the round, she'll do an AoE attack that can actually hurt your teammates, which sucked a lot because trying to get out of that range was pretty annoying. Although her exclusive does help with that problem, but why 1 ring? Why not just make it where she doesn't hurt her teammates just by wearing this? So many questions with this one. I really hate how this one was done. With Emperor Lovina, they did him kinda dirty with the stats increase and it being a weapon and all, but everything on it is pretty good. I would recommend putting this on him, especially if you PvP with them. As for new content, we got more story chapter being added, new stuff being added to the components, I think. I'm not actually sure what this one was all about, and probably one of the most favorite event of all, the endless Voyage. I miss the good old days when this event was new. And at the last week of this month is the Macho Lotto skin for Emperor Lovina. And I'm really tempted to get this skin because it looks really sick. But I'm planning on saving for the next 3 banners in the coming month. And I strongly suggest that you guys should too, because next month we have the most craziest character to ever exist. And that character is Jintoki. Both him and Kagura are really good, but using Jintoki literally makes you feel like you're breaking the game. After that, Lightbringer and Adon Kelmo are next, and both of them are really amazing at what they do. And not far after that is the 3rd anniversary, so we're not actually that far away from getting the new Zerida and SP Matthew. So I hope you guys have been saving, and if not, start saving now, since these 2 characters we're getting aren't really a must need. Of course you don't have to go along with what I'm saying right now, but it's just what I'm suggesting. And funny enough, their banner only lasts for 3 weeks, so we'll be getting the Gintama collab a week sooner. But anyways though, that's all I got for you guys. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you guys are planning on doing. I'm going to be skipping this banner so I can spend it on the next 3 months, so there might not be a video for these guys. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and yeah, thanks for watching, your fellow